On the night of February 22nd, the Russian Federation launched hundreds of drones and dozens of missiles to conduct attacks and inflict critical damage upon Ukraine's energy infrastructure, which is mostly located in the central part of the country. As you can clearly see, according to this map, the Russian side has utilized hundreds of unmanned aerial vehicles. That's the yellow line. A tremendous number of Iskander-type ballistic missiles. These are the orange lines. Strategic aviation was also engaged, and strikes were launched using X-101 cruise missiles. Furthermore, sources are reporting that throughout the night, strikes were carried out using anti-ship hypersonic missiles, specifically those known as Zircon. Regarding the Zircon missiles, of course, there appear to be some notable discrepancies in the reported figures. Some individual sources are indicating that a total of 4 Zircon-type missiles were actually employed. Other sources, however, suggest that up to 8 missiles of this particular type were deployed. The strikes, as you can clearly observe, were primarily aimed at energy infrastructure. And now, let's proceed to discuss everything in detail. According to incoming information, strikes were carried out on the Vinnytsia substation 750, located southeast of the settlement of Vinnytsia, precisely this facility. And from open sources, it can be calculated that approximately 4 X-101 cruise missiles were employed for the strike on this energy infrastructure object on the evening of February 22nd, 2026. No information has been released yet regarding the effectiveness of this strike. Perhaps very soon, satellite images will become available, and then we'll be able to analyze the extent of the damage. Another area that was subjected to massive strikes was the settlement of Kropivnitsky, as well as energy facilities around this settlement. If we look at the map, then this is the section. According to information from open sources, strikes were carried out in this region, primarily using ballistic missiles as well as unmanned aerial vehicles. Let us now discuss all the details of this situation. We should begin by noting that the strike specifically targeted a 330 kilovolt substation located in the vicinity of the settlement of Shoska. According to the information received, a total of approximately 15 Iskander-type missiles were used in strikes against the Kropivnitsky settlement area. This indicates that the highest concentration of Iskander-type missiles was directed specifically at this particular location. Additionally, a strike was also carried out against the Krivohrad combined heat and power plant, which is situated in the northern part of the settlement. Please note that in principle, we have the Vinnytsia 750 substation, which then smoothly flows towards the Kropivnitsky energy system. So, we can see that the strikes were aimed at this chain of various energy facilities, ensuring the flow and also the unification of the western and eastern parts of Ukraine into a single energy system. Let's also take another look. Strikes were carried out against the Kyiv region and the city of Kyiv. This means it's another crucial chain of energy installations, substations, which ensure the unification of eastern and western Ukraine into a single energy chain, a unified energy system. Thus, we can observe that the primary objective of the night attack was not merely to inflict critical damage upon Ukraine's energy infrastructure, but rather to sever the eastern and western power grids and establish isolated systems, each independent of the other, with which the Russian side would subsequently proceed to deal individually. Once again, Kropivnitsky and the settlement of Shoska. Throughout the night, this particular area was subjected to strikes, potentially involving as many as 15 Iskander missiles. This information was published today directly by pro-Western experts. Next, we move on to the city of Kyiv. Here on the map, it's visible that strikes were carried out on the territory south of the city, on the city itself, and also on the territory west of the city. If we talk about the territory west of the city, here is the settlement of Nalivaikivka, as well as the Kyiv 750 substation, connecting the Rivne nuclear power plant with the city of Kyiv. That is, apparently, the strike was aimed at it. Or alternatively, the strikes were delivered at locations in the vicinity of the settlement of Nalivaikovka. There's a small platform here, apparently used by Ukrainian armed forces units to launch drones, possibly helicopters, so these helicopters can later strike Russian Geran-type drones. A small air defense system is set up here, with one goal: to defend the Kyiv 750 substation. And as for the information received throughout the night, no further significant details regarding the strike have emerged. There was no information even concerning the potential number of missiles or drones that were deployed. However, regarding the city of Kyiv, the strikes here targeted the Kyiv CHP plant number 6, which is situated in the northeastern part. From open sources, information is being received regarding the deployment of at least 4 Iskander missiles. Additionally, a strike was conducted against Kiev's CHP-4, which is situated in the southern part, or more precisely, against CHP-5, also located in the southern area of the city. Specifically, in this particular instance, 6 Kh-101 missiles and 4 Iskander missiles were utilized. Well, I mean, but again, the figures differ. From open sources, from independent sources, information is coming in that in total, throughout the night, up to 70 missiles of various types were deployed. These include X-101s, Iskanders, Zircons, and X-59s. 69 were even used. Only 71 missiles in total. But if we speak of the official figures released today by Ukraine's Ministry of Defense, the numbers vary greatly. The Ukrainian side reports that throughout the night, 345 airborne targets were deployed, and of these, 307 were shot down. And in total, the Russian side, on the night of February 22nd, deployed only 50 missiles, give or take. So we can see the difference is roughly 21 missiles. Well, it's hard to comment on this situation. Perhaps this difference truly exists. Perhaps the calculations are being done quite quickly. Perhaps somewhere someone missed something or counted too much. In any case, this isn't merely a strike against the energy sector. It's not just an attack on the eve of the anniversary of the conflict's beginning in Ukraine. This is not simply a blow before the start of another round of negotiations between Ukraine, the Russian Federation, and the United States. This strike is part of a two-day plan to destabilize Ukraine's entire energy system. The attack was launched tonight, on the 22nd of February. Ukrainian energy workers will definitely spend the next 24 hours stabilizing the situation, attempting to establish connections and transfer power from west to east. And well, let's just say, this entire day will be dedicated precisely to these events. And already tomorrow, it appears, on the morning of February 23rd, Hungary and Slovakia will cease exporting electrical energy to the territory of Ukraine. And this was announced by the leaders of these countries, Prime Ministers Fico and Orban, over the course of the last few days. The main conditions from Hungary and Slovakia are the resumption of oil pumping through the Druzhba pipeline. Viktor Orban once again emphasized that the pipeline itself has already been repaired, and the Ukrainian side is politically and deliberately, let's say, slowing down the process of restoration work, as well as the launch of the pipeline, referring to some unclear, let's say, pretexts, some incomprehensible reasons. Let me remind you that Hungary is facing extremely crucial elections ahead, and the opposition, which also includes, forces opposing Hungary and Orban, will certainly attempt to remove him from his position. And the opposition will, of course, strive to seize power in this territory. And let me remind you that Hungary is one of several European Union countries that oppose providing loans to Ukraine and also oppose granting Ukraine full membership in the European Union. Therefore, the Ukrainian side is extremely interested in a change of the political regime through constitutional means within the territory of Hungary, naturally. Therefore, the very step to block the Druzhba pipeline is also part of a certain, let's say, a political race, an election campaign directly against Viktor Orban, the goal of which is to create an energy crisis in the country and also to provoke a rise in prices. This is precisely how Viktor Orban explains the current situation. Consequently, the prime ministers of Slovakia and Hungary have started to quite actively work against Ukraine on the eve of, let's put it this way, the presidential election campaign. And their ultimatum was that on the 23rd, the power would be cut off if electricity and power supplies, if oil supplies via the Druzhba pipeline are not resumed. However, today, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine officially reacted to the recent statements from Orban and Fico. And, according to a publication released on the official page of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, the Ukrainian side has firmly rejected all ultimatums and has not accepted any of the incoming threats that have been made. So, there is a very high probability that after the current massive strike from the Russian Federation, tomorrow Ukraine will stop receiving electricity from Hungary and Slovakia. I'd like to remind you that according to information from official sources, the Ukrainian side receives up to 61 or perhaps 41% of its electricity, power capacity, and also oil products from these two specific states. This means that tomorrow perhaps the situation in Ukraine's energy sector could worsen significantly. And it is then, in all likelihood, that decisions will be made concerning the future negotiation processes and a potential meeting involving Putin, Zelensky, and possibly the leader of the United States. Today, information is also coming in that Steve Witkoff, a representative, a special envoy of Donald Trump, said that within 3 weeks, a meeting, negotiations between the USA, Russia, and Ukraine will take place, where the date of a meeting between Zelensky and Putin will be determined. That is, in this way, events are now being forced against the backdrop of the energy crisis. Also, on the other hand, today the British are declaring that as soon as the conflict in Ukraine ends, the United Kingdom will immediately deploy its troops, regardless of what agreements Russia and Ukraine or the US managed to reach during negotiations in Geneva, whether in Geneva or in the United Arab Emirates. Thus, the United Kingdom is trying to show that negotiations are not the end of the conflict in Ukraine, and it will all continue. Well, now let's move on to the line of combat contact. And we will begin with the Zaporizhzhia sector of the front, where Russian units continue their offensive towards 3 key settlements. These are Verkhnya Tersa, Vozdvizhivka, and Razdvianka, about which pro-Russian sources have been reporting continuously for days that Russian units have managed to significantly improve their positions over the past day or several days. And already, Telegram channels affiliated with the Vostok troop grouping are beginning to publish various pieces of information, suggesting that in the very near future, news regarding an advance will emerge. And based on all these statements and articles, one can draw the conclusion that most likely one of the settlements in this particular sector will soon come under the full control of the Russian army. In all likelihood, this could be either a small village known as Gorkoye, situated to the south of Verkhnya Tersa, or it could be Verkhnya Tersa itself. Should this truly occur, then we can speak of the beginning of the collapse of the defense of the Orikhiv sector of the front, and overall, an even greater and even more significant worsening of the situation of the armed forces of Ukraine along the entire Zaporizhzhia direction. On the other hand, the Ukrainian side is continuing its operation to infiltrate its units from the northern direction. Today, the map has once again undergone changes. According to the latest adjustments, Ukrainian units have already been spotted in the area of the settlements of Zalahoda and Krasnohorivka. Ukrainian units were also observed in the settlement of Kalinivka and also in the settlement of Ternova. But speaking of Ternova, Russian sources have also published objective monitoring footage, on which we could observe strikes targeting the forward positions of the armed forces of Ukraine within the area of this particular settlement. And for now, it's difficult to say what it's about. We're talking about real, let's say, combat operations and actual control, or is it primarily about saboteurs who have managed to infiltrate the territory of this small village? Next, we're moving with you to the Dobropoli sector. Today, we're receiving footage of the Ukrainian side hastily attempting to create new fortifications deep within the Dnipropetrovsk Oblast. In these shots, we can see a vehicle driving along a road in the vicinity of the settlement of Shakhterskoye, and how fortifications, anti-tank ditches, dragon's teeth, barbed wire are being constructed here. That is, new defense lines for settlements and the Dnipropetrovsk region as a whole, and the city of Zaporizhzhia are being built at a significantly accelerated pace. This means that in the near future, the Ukrainian side apparently expects the start of quite active hostilities here. Today, several pro-Ukrainian sources have stated that by 2026, the Russian side's primary objective is to advance towards the settlement of Pavlohrad, rather than towards the settlement of Zaporizhzhia. So, Zaporizhzhia, it seems, the battle for Zaporizhzhia, it appears, is being postponed until 2027 if the conflict continues. And for 2026, the Russian command faces a specific objective, according to certain pro-Ukrainian experts who claim to have direct connections with the General Staff of Ukraine. The Russian side has set itself the task of reaching the outskirts of Pavlohrad and potentially blockading Pavlohrad. And should control be established over this particular settlement, it would, of course, very significantly disrupt the logistics chain of the armed forces of Ukraine, both from eastern Ukraine to the west, and equally from the west back towards the east. Therefore, it's quite possible that such an operation will first be carried out, before Russian units begin to move with a broad front towards the Dnieper River. And it is precisely for this reason that the Ukrainian side, according to some experts, launched a counteroffensive in the northern Zaporizhzhia sector, aiming to improve its positions and occupy the grey zone before the start of the spring and summer military campaigns. On the Dobropol sector itself, new adjustments are once again being published. According to information from open sources, Russian units are quite actively advancing in this direction. And this information is being confirmed by both pro-Ukrainian and pro-Russian cartographers. Currently, the Russian army appears to be concluding combat operations for the settlement named Krishino. It's possible that soon the Russian Ministry of Defense will confirm information about their advance in this sector. Additionally, the Russian army has closely approached the settlements of Sergivka and Novoalexandrovka from the south. These are the adjustments being observed in this area over the past several days. The information is being confirmed by both pro-Russian cartographers and pro-Ukrainian cartographic services. Russian units have approached very closely, and combat operations for both settlements will soon gain very high intensity. No changes in the Konstantinovka direction. In the Sloviansk sector of the front, Russian units are advancing along the M03 highway. This information is mainly confirmed today by pro-Ukrainian mapping services. I'll remind you, just yesterday, a video was published from the northern part of Minkovka, confirming the presence and confident control of the Russian army in this sector. Today, reports are coming in that the Russian army has moved right up to the next defensive stronghold of the Ukrainian armed forces, located in the vicinity of the settlement of Fedorivka. This defense node includes 2 villages, Dibrova, Fedorivka Druha, as well as 3 large forest areas situated along the perimeter of this settlement. The largest and most crucial defensive stronghold on the route from Alexandrovka to Sloviansk. The Russian army, as you can see, has already approached this defense hub closely. Combat operations for this sector will begin very soon. On the Lyman front, on the Lyman direction, no changes. On the northern sectors of the front, also no adjustments. But speaking of the northern sectors, a large amount of video footage is being published today along the state border. The Russian side is launching massive strikes using aviation and heavy flamethrower systems, the Tios Sontsepyok, against the forward positions of the Ukrainian armed forces. It appears that for the spring-summer campaign, certain objectives are also being pursued as a secondary task, specifically regarding the creation and expansion of a buffer zone along the state border, extending from the northeastern part of Sumy Oblast to the northeastern part of Kharkiv Oblast. Here, a large number of video materials are being published showing strikes on temporary deployment points of AFU units, and these strikes are being carried out quite actively with the use of aviation and flamethrower systems.